Now, I'm glad to say that Kate Smurthwaite has joined us at this late hour. I know that she's a shrinking violet that would normally be asleep by now. Kate.
Hi, George. How are you?
Very well, and I'm glad to make your acquaintance over the airwaves. Now, International Women's Day has come and gone in Britain without leaving much of a trace.
Well, in actual fact, it's not really come and gone, because what we're sort of doing this year is really a whole month of events. This month, if you didn't know, is Women's History Month. So, and because it's the 100-year anniversary of International Women's Day, in actual fact, there's events going on right the way through. I'm involved in International Women's Day events as late as the 30th of this month. So there's plenty more still to see. And this weekend, at the South Bank, the WOW Festival, Women of the World Festival, I'm going to be down there with a group called WAST, Women Asylum Seekers Together. They'll be telling some of their stories of how they entered the asylum process, how they escaped the countries they've come from. So there's still loads and loads to see. So don't worry if you feel like you've missed it. There's plenty to catch up with.
Of course, we don't any longer have very many local authorities, and we certainly don't have a mayoralty in London that's prepared to put resources into these kind of things.
Well, that's absolutely true. I mean, I guess it's one of these issues where we're always sort of feel like we're being given the scraps from the table. It always seems very strange that 51% of the population, and I read somewhere that there are donkey sanctuaries that get sort of like 10 times more funding than rape crisis centres, and you think, how can this be reasonable? But that said, there's also some really fantastic and cool stuff going on. Organisations like Object that have grown up really in the last 5-10 years are now making enormous progress, changing laws, raising awareness about stuff. So it's not all bad news.
And yet there are other countries where International Women's Day is officially on a state level and a local state level a really big deal. I mean, I mentioned earlier a friend of mine whose son goes to the same nursery school as mine and whom I see regularly. He's a Ukrainian diplomat, and he was off on holiday because all of the Ukraine is off on holiday on International Women's Day, as indeed is all of Russia. Of course, the very idea of such a thing in Britain is fanciful.
Yeah, we're quite a long way behind on that front. This is also the first year that we've done this Women's History Month thing, so that's very much in its infancy. In the US, Women's History Month is as widely recognised as Black History Month. It's something where, there are lots and lots of events going on, even in quite small towns and villages, whereas this year, I think Women's History Month, there isn't a great deal going on outside of London. But there's a lot of Women's Day celebrations. That's why you were unable to get hold of me earlier, because I've just stepped out of the Florin pub where the Rowan Arts Centre have been putting on an all-female comedy night, and it's been absolutely fantastic.
Now, let me ask you about that, an all-female comedy night. Is it funny?
Yeah, of course it is. I was the headliner, so I can assure you that it was hilarious. Yeah, I mean, it's weird that we think about discrimination against women, and there are some obvious professions that come to mind, such as politics, such as the banking industry or medicine and things like this. But in actual fact, of course, it's across everything. And weirdly, if you say to a woman, well, I don't think women make good dentists, she'll quite rightly look at you like,
oh, that would be ridiculous. Most dentists are women.
Exactly, but if you turn around and say, well, I don't think women are funny, somehow that's actually not considered a very outrageous thing to say, and yet what you're effectively saying is that my gender precludes me from doing my job, and I do take exception to it.
No, but I think there's some empirical evidence to suggest that...
not a scratch, George, not a scratch.
Well, here's my empirical evidence. Not many women make me laugh.
Well, okay, so there's a bunch of things going on there. I mean, first of all, I think you have to ask the question whether they're trying to make you laugh. I mean, if you're sat around... I mean, I think it's absolutely the case, for instance, that in business meetings and political meetings, women feel that their position is at risk, that they're not taken as seriously as the men, and so they probably feel less freedom to make light-hearted jokes and remarks than their male colleagues, because they're so keen to make sure that they're taken seriously.
I'm talking about professional comedians, Kate. I mean, I haven't had the benefit of seeing you, and I'm told you're terrific. But if you ask me, if I think of the women in the comedy business that I've seen on television or very occasionally on stage, not many of them made me laugh. I'm being honest with you.
No, I understand, but by the same time, I mean, I could list 20 or 30 guys who don't make me laugh. But I don't sort of see that as a general. I don't think, well, therefore men aren't funny. I think, well, that's not my taste. I'm not a fan of Harry Hill. I don't like Frankie Boyle. That's not my taste. That's not my taste. But I think, as with all of these things, I mean, to be honest, about 1 in 10 comedians is my kind of act, the kind of act that I like. And we probably don't see 10 female comedians on TV on a regular basis. So to find the one that you like, unfortunately, switching the TV on just isn't going to cut it these days. The only way to do it, really, is to get out to events like these. And there are some fantastic, I mean, Laughing Cows, fabulous organisation that puts on all-female shows in London, Manchester and Birmingham. And there's a huge range of acts there. And, of course, they won't all be to your taste, but, that's the way of the world.
Yeah.
You find the ones that are, and then you can follow them.
I'm certainly happy to be persuaded. Let me ask you about this survey that says 4 in 10 young women have never personally experienced sexist remarks or sexist behaviour. That came as a bit of a surprise to me, Kate. What about you?
Well, it's interesting because what actually I mean, first of all, I would question, it's what they consider to be sexist remarks or sexist behaviour, because I think when I was a younger woman I kind of thought, oh, well, they probably mean it as a joke, I should laugh along with it. Oh, I think there's a point where you kind of think, oh, it's just harmless banter, or because you want to feel part of the group you put up with it, and then perhaps in a few years' time they'll look back on their lives and go, actually, that wasn't really acceptable, and actually I do now recognise that as offensive. But even if we take it at absolute face value and say 4 in 10 say they haven't experienced any, well,
6 in 10 have,
6 in 10 have, and that means we've got a huge problem.
Well, that's a point I made earlier. No, but one of the things, let me just ask you on this. I'm not in the habit, indeed I don't think I ever have in my whole life, ever whistled at someone, a wolf whistle. But I was a bit surprised to see that listed as a sexist act. Do you really think that that whistling at a woman because you think she's attractive is a sexist remark?
Well, it's weird that you would say because you think she's attractive. I never, when somebody whistles at me, I never think, oh gosh, I must look fabulous today. I think, oh, go away, leave me alone.
Why do you think they're whistling then?
Why do I think they're whistling? Because they want to, let me know that they want to sort of make a point or make me feel uncomfortable or assert their authority or whatever. It's not something that makes me feel comfortable. I wonder how you would feel if people started whistling at you when you walked by.
It happens all the time, Kate. It happens all the time. No,
it does.
I don't know why men whistle at some women rather than others, but I think I'm speaking for the male half of the species on this. Men do not wolf whistle women because they want to assert their authority. They do it because they quite fancy the woman that's going by. And that in itself is not sexist behaviour, is it?
I'm sorry, that doesn't make sense, because I don't know any woman ever in the history of humanity who's been whistled at and turned round and gone, oh, hello, you seem nice, shall we go for a drink? If you're trying to, if you're trying to let women know that you find them attractive, that's not the way to do it. That's not going to result. I mean, there's no point in letting women know unless you hope to follow up and engage in a relationship or initiate some contact with them. I don't need to know what your view of my attractiveness is unless you actually intend to buy me a drink and ask me out. Otherwise, I don't need to know that. In actual fact, the very fact that you feel the need to let me know your opinion of my attractiveness, I don't care whether you think I'm attractive or not, because I'm not sexually interested in you, so I don't want to know that. And the idea that I should somehow value myself based on whether men find me attractive or not, I don't want to know that. That's the implication, because if I need to know...
It's not. I'm talking about the motives of the men that are whistling. You said it was to show their superiority, to somehow oppress you. I don't think you're right about that.
But they're trying to let me know what their opinion of me is.
Oh, you're a nippy sweetie, Kate. Smurthwaite, feminist writer, stand-up comedian. At least, in my opinion, humbly, Your Honour. 08717 223344. That's the number to call. Thanks, Kate. Here's the news.